Hey everyone, welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love bold and beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. The bold and the beautiful has always thrived on moments where words cut deeper than any physical blow, and in this latest twist, the weight of 7 simple words will alter the course of Will Spencer's life, shatter the fragile bond he thought he had built, and send ripples through Los Angeles that no one can ignore. It begins with Electra Forrester, a woman torn between duty, loyalty, and the unbearable heaviness of carrying secrets too dark to keep, standing in the quiet of the Spencer home. With her suitcase by the door, her eyes red from nights of sleepless crying, her hands trembling as she grips the handle, yet her resolve unshaken, because she knows that leaving is the only way to protect herself and the unborn child she has sworn to raise alone, even if it means breaking the heart of the man she once believed she could lean on, a man who had promised her protection, partnership, and love but who had, in her eyes, let her down when she needed him most. Will, the young Spencer heir, who had already been struggling under the shadow of his father Bill's ruthless empire and the burden of trying to prove himself as more than a spoiled child of privilege, stood frozen in that room, watching Electra fight for words that could carry the weight of her exit, unaware that the ones about to spill from her lips would haunt him for the rest of his life, 7 words that would feel like glass underfoot, slicing away at everything he thought he knew about loyalty, love, and family. Because as Electra's voice cracked, barely audible but laced with finality, she uttered, "You'll never see me again, Will," and in that moment, silence roared through the space, his heart plummeting into an abyss he couldn't climb out of, his mind replaying those words over and over like a curse that rewrote his destiny, and while the world outside continued as normal, the Forrester offices buzzing, Bill plotting his next move, Sheila lurking in shadows, and Luna's pregnancy scandal threatening to drown the entire Logan Forrester Spencer clan. Inside that room, time fractured, the boyish glimmer of hope in Will's eyes dying in an instant as Electra's figure blurred with tears and distance, her footsteps echoing like a funeral march toward the airport that would carry her far from Los Angeles, leaving him not only abandoned but also burning with questions about why she felt she had to flee. Questions that would gnaw at him until they hardened into obsession, into anger, into a need for answers that might someday pull him back into her orbit, but for now, all that existed was the hollow shell of a young man broken by 7 words, and the image of Electra disappearing into the night, her departure setting the stage for a storm of consequences that will inevitably draw every major player into the crossfire, because on this show, no one truly leaves without leaving behind a trail of destruction, and Electra's 7 heartbreaking words might just be the spark that ignites the next great war between the Forresters, the Spencers, and anyone reckless enough to stand in there. The moment Electra spoke those 7 words to Will Spencer, the air in the Spencer living room changed. It was no longer just a gentle goodbye, it was the type of declaration that imprinted itself on a person's memory, plaguing them long after the echo faded. "You'll never see me again, Will." The sentence is simple and even casual in form, yet it contains 1,000 unsaid connotations. She could have stated, "I'm leaving or we're done," phrases that, while hurtful, leave the door open for further reconciliation. But Electra, terrified but determined, chose finality. She chose words that created a barrier, slammed the door, and locked it shut in Will's face. The decision was not just about her, it was about survival, about the crushing storm of scandals and betrayals raging around Los Angeles, scandals she no longer had the strength to bear. Electra had been unraveling for days before this moment. Alone in the Forrester guesthouse at night, she would look at the ceiling, one palm on her stomach, murmuring to herself promises of strength she didn't believe she possessed. She remembered Luna, whose pregnancy had already caused upheaval in the household, and Ivy, her only confidant. She remembered how she had sobbed in Ivy's arms, expressing her own pregnancy and anxieties, and vowed that if no one stood by her side, she would still raise her child alone. But confessing to Ivy was one thing, confronting Will was another. Because Will wasn't just any man, he was a Spencer. A name connected with power, wealth, and, in many cases, betrayal. A moniker associated with Bill, whose merciless history overshadowed every move Will made, whether he admitted it or not. Electra had noticed Will's generosity. There were times when he looked at her as a lady he wanted to protect rather than an accessory to their family's turmoil. However, those moments had become fewer and further apart, buried under misunderstandings, jealousy, and the suffocating tension caused by other people's secrets. She remembered the night she informed him about Luna, how she fumbled over her words, unable to express the crushing weight of betrayal she felt after uncovering her cousin's deception. Will had tried to console her, but his eyes were distant and hesitant, as if he wasn't sure which side he was meant to be on. And that's when Electra understood something chilling. If she remained attached to Will, she'd always be a pawn in someone else's game. Always susceptible to his family's pull. Always one scandal away from being hauled into the mud. So when she stood in front of him, her luggage packed and her heart thumping like a drum against her ribs, she knew she couldn't say a soft goodbye. A gentle goodbye might entice him to pursue her, battle for her, and cling to her. But Electra required separation. She needed to sever the cord in a single, sharp cut. And so she said it, the 7 words that would pierce his chest like a dagger. Will freeze. He felt he was ready for her to leave. After all, the clues were there, her distance, her stillness, and the way her gaze lingered on the door when they argued, as if she was already halfway gone. But hearing her voice shatter with finality, was a heartache he had not prepared for. Will's mouth parted, but no words emerged. His throat tightened, his chest burned, and in that frozen moment, he felt younger than he had in years, stripped of all the bravado he had used to hide his vulnerabilities. Electra was walking away, not only from him, but from Los Angeles, from the tangled web of their lives, and from the prospect of a future together. You'll never see me again, Will. He replayed it instantaneously, like a horrible tape he couldn't turn off. Did she mean never in days, weeks, or months? Did she mean never as a punishment, that even if fate brought them together, she would refuse to look at or acknowledge him? Or did she mean never in the strictest sense, that this was the last time he'd see her face, hear her voice, or breathe the same air as her? Electra turned, each step closer to the door heavier than the last, her luggage wheels moving quietly over the floor. Will's gaze followed her every move, hoping for her to look back just once, to give him some indication that this wasn't as final as it seemed. But Electra never looked back. She knew if she did, she would crumble. She might fall into his arms and ask him to give her a reason to stay. She couldn't afford such weakness. Not now. Outside, the Los Angeles night was dense with silence, interrupted only by the distant buzz of traffic and the faint rustle of palm trees moving in the breeze. The metropolis that had previously served as a stage for their love, agony, and secrets was now only a backdrop to her escape. Electra closed the door behind her, the click of the latch sounding like a funeral bell. Will slumped onto the couch, his face buried in his hands, his chest heaving with tears that he fought to suppress. His world had changed in one breath, broken by 7 words he'd never forget. He considered calling his father and telling Bill everything, but what could Bill do? Money could not buy back love. Power could not undo finality. Will was left with only a hollow ache and the awareness that Electra was sliding away from him with each passing second. And as Electra's taxi drove away into the night, the glow of the city lights washing over her tear-stained face, she whispered to herself words she would never admit aloud, "I'll miss you too, Will." Because sometimes the cruelest heartbreaks are born not from hatred, but from love too fragile to survive the fire of Los Angeles. And, while Electra thought her words had concluded their story, the fact of soap operas, and life itself, is that no story is ever truly completed. Her 7 terrible words had closed one chapter, but another was already waiting to begin. Electra's departure was more than a moment, it was an unraveling, a storm slowly accumulating until it exploded in 7 words that left Will Spencer wounded in ways he never imagined possible. The air in the Spencer living room felt too heavy to breathe. The crisp aroma of leather from Bill's furniture, the delicate tick of the antique clock on the mantel, even the low hum of traffic outside all seemed to deepen the silence between them. Will stood near the stairway, one hand on the banister, his knuckles white. Electra stood by the entrance, her bag already upright beside her, her shoulders set with strength she didn't have. Her eyes were red, ringed with tiredness, and her makeup smudged from too many nights of crying alone. Will's voice cracked as he attempted to stop her. "Electra, please don't do this. Not like this." She turned to face him, and for a brief moment, her determination trembled. He appeared so youthful in that moment, so unlike the self-assured Spencer heir that the world expected him to be. She saw the boy beneath the man, weak and desperate, pleading for something she couldn't provide. It nearly broke her. Almost. But she reminded herself of every reason she had packed her belongings, every time she had been forced to swallow her pain while he waited, while he allowed his family to shape the course of their life. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said the 7 words that would haunt him forever: "You'll never see me again, Will." For a time, the room did not seem real. Will's ears rang, his chest hollowed, and his eyesight became blurry, as if he had been punched. The 7 words were not a warning. They were not a threat. They represented finality, cold, unbending, ruthless finality. He felt them in his bones, a harsh echo ricocheting within him, ripping away at everything he thought he could cling to. His lips trembled as he attempted to respond, but no words came out. His throat clenched, and he feared he may choke. His body begged him to run to her, take her hand, or do anything other than stand there like a statue. But his mind was immobilized, fixated on the sound of her voice, replaying it endlessly. Electra's chest rose and fell rapidly as she forced herself not to collapse. She wanted to scream, sob, and fling herself into his arms, begging him for a reason to remain. But she couldn't. Not after all. Not after the betrayals, lies, and nights spent wondering if she was simply setting herself up for tragedy. If she stayed, she would collapse under the weight of everyone else's falsehoods, including Luna's, Bill's, and Will's silences. And she had a child to think about. She couldn't risk rearing her child in this hazardous environment. So she did the most difficult thing she had ever done. She grabbed the handle of her luggage, turned, and headed to the door. Will stumbled forward, reaching out instinctively, but she had already pulled the door open. The night air blew in, cold, harsh, and final. Electra did not look back. If she did, she knew her determination would crumble. She strolled outside, her heels softly clicking on the pavement, each one sounding like a hammer striking nails into Will's heart. The door closed with a resounding bang, and Will heard his world collapse. He lurched back and collapsed on the couch, his chest heaving. The tears came quickly, hot, and unrestrained. He hid his face in his hands, sobbing quietly against his palms. He'd lost her. Not just for a night or a fight, but for good. At the very least, it was what her words promised. In the taxi, Electra sat quietly, her suitcase alongside her and her hands folded securely in her lap. The city lights flashed over her face, capturing the gleam of fresh tears. She muttered to herself, too softly for anyone to hear, "I'll miss you too, Will." It was her truth, one she could never tell him. The one that made her parting even more heartbreaking. Will's phone rang back at home in Spencer. Bill's name appeared on the screen, but Will couldn't force himself to respond. What could he say? That he had just lost the only lady he genuinely loved? That Electra had left him with only 7 words, sounding like a curse. No, his father would regard it as weakness. Bill would advise him to toughen up, move on, and find someone else. But Will did not desire anyone else. He wanted Electra. And deep inside, Will knew it wasn't over. Not for him. Not for her. Not for Los Angeles. Because on the bold and the beautiful, no goodbye is ever completely permanent. Electra could have walked away tonight, but her departure would leave a wound that was too acute, apparent, and consuming. Will Spencer and Electra Forrester's paths would eventually meet again. And when they did, those 7 devastating words would no longer be an ending, but rather the fire that reignited a story no one could have expected. Electra's remarks did more than just destroy Will's heart, they sliced into the very fabric of his being.